if I had to pick, if I had to condense down the entire, albeit short, 21 years history of film that I've seen, I think the one that changed my life most, or I should say the trilogy, would be The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, wow.
And I suppose it could be a fairly stock standard answer for some people. I know it was a very popular, a very lucrative series, but I think The Lord of the Rings has had, of all the films I've seen, the greatest impact on who I am and what I enjoy as a person.
Yeah.
Can't quite recall, and this I suppose would annoy hardcore book buffs, but I can't recall if I saw the films or read the books first. Mm-hmm. So I don't know to whom I should be ascribing the majority of the credit, but I think equal portion goes to Tolkien and to Peter Jackson and his crew. But if I were to, for example, take you through my phone, you'd find mostly Celtic music, Irish, Scottish sound music, that sort of thing, and also a lot of soundtrack music. Okay. And I think in part the soundtrack for The Lord of the Rings, which had a lot of Celtic, Norse influence, things like that, got me ticked on to that sort of musical theme. Yeah. And then also just the love of soundtrack music, having come out of those films thinking, my God, what a magical, majestic score there by Howard Shore. And that had me sitting in every film just waiting to go home and download the soundtrack for whatever I'd just heard. So it kind of opened me up to that world, I suppose. And then also just when you first perceive that idyllic rural English landscape set up in the Shire at the beginning and throughout the film. I'd grown up with Postman Pat and all these great British cartoons, and I suppose it made me long to live in a place like that. I know it's New Zealand, but I've always somehow identified with that beautiful rural lifestyle. But I'm presuming you've seen Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was just talking about it.
I sometimes bluff my way through. But I've got to say, it's not my personal. That's
fair
the beauty
enough.
of films that change people's lives. Is that depending on the generation and depending on the person, different films have different.
But you're familiar with all the same with how it is. It's an immense, intricate world,
of course,
like a secondary world, and that.
You like that? Because
I was in love with that because for a long time, and my efforts I think were lacking, but for a long time I tried to emulate something of that sort by way of writing my own stories and things like that, and I try and invent these languages. But of course, whenever I invented a language, it was basically just an English alphabet substitute, very simple as a 9-10-year-old would do. I presume at some point I'll probably get into writing or something like that, and if I do, it'll be because of The Lord of the Rings. It got me reading, it got me watching, it got me involved in everything I've ever, I suppose, liked, especially, as I said, music and art. The influence on the way I draw as well came from the concept art and everything from Lord of the Rings. Essentially every facet of my personality. If I were to give you a number, if I were to quantify it, I would say that I'm probably 40% Lord of the Rings as a person. Okay. And the rest is, of course, a product of my parents and where I was raised and where I went to school. And, of course, my school was the Scots College for quite a few years here in Sydney, and they had us playing bagpipes and everything like that. And so that certainly influenced part of my love of Celtic music. But I think most of what I put out there, what I relate to people is influenced by The Lord of the Rings. So it has a massive impact on who I am as a person. Not singularly my ridiculous accent that you could hear now, which is some mutt noise that I think is just a combination of the different places that I've been to, but certainly part of it is Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it was obviously I was going to ask because as an actor you hear your accent in various guises.
A little while ago, I think maybe 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, I think, I had an Australian accent. And so that the time there doesn't quite correlate and ergo appear to causate with my having watched The Lord of the Rings. Certainly there was a gap between my first watching Lord of the Rings and my adopting some weird, heinous, un-Australian voice. But I think my having heard those accents, all the accents from the United Kingdom that they worked into the films and Lord of the Rings, I think prepared me for that transition that would eventually happen. And I have no real clue why it happened. Yeah. I think also part of it is Pirates of the Caribbean. I spent a long time doing Jack Sparrow impersonations, and so part of that has slipped in there somehow.
Yeah. I'm just intrigued about your sort of journey as an actor, though.
How did the Lord of the Rings influence you?
And just in general, so was there a film that kind of made you go, or what made you want to be an actor in the first place, whether it's film or otherwise?
I think the Lord of the Rings was probably it, because I saw all these beautiful, larger-than-life characters with this immense world behind them, and I suppose I always wanted to go and make something like that. And then, of course, star in it, so as to get the credit for it. Yeah. But if someone had ever remade The Lord of the Rings, or if they should do in however so many years, I'll do everything I can to be a part of them. But I do think...
Did you audition for the Hobbit?
For the Hobbit?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
And I'm glad I didn't. Because I didn't like them.
You didn't dig it?
No, I didn't dig them.
It's fascinating. I'll give you my own personal opinion of Lord of the Rings, and it just shows what different people look for. And of
course, I might be biased here, having grown up with it and having been a child when I first saw it. But I've seen the extended editions and everything countless times since being a child, and the Lord of the Rings still holds up for me. Like, for example, the ride of the Rohirrim on the Pelennor Fields, the big horse charge in the third film, is one of the greatest cinematic extravaganzas of all time, in my opinion.
Totally.
With the beautiful violin score that's underneath it. But what were you going to say?
The Oscars to prove it.
So it does.
But I was going to say, no, for me, it's interesting because I look for different things. Like, so when I saw Lord of the Rings, I didn't see the attention to detail. I just thought, man, nothing's going on.
That's fair enough. It was slow. It dragged on for you.
It's just like, okay, so they go from A to B. I didn't see all the bits.
I understand.
The attention
what
to
you
detail,
ought to have done
is what you love.
See, you should have watched the making of documentaries. So you watch the films, right? And it's like 3 hours per film, something like that. If you're watching the extended editions, you watch the making ofs. It's that again, and then some of just how they did it. And for me, that I think really made my appreciation of the film that much better. The films, plural, that much better, just because it goes into such depth as to all of the creative work that went involved, and physical and logistical, and so. I think that might be, if you should at any time desire a newfound appreciation for Lord of the Rings.
I've got a 6-year-old son, and we've already revisited the Hobbit movies.
But see, you watch the making of the Hobbit films. They have still a lot of that, but much of the magic to me was gone because of how much more digital they appeared. And when you go back and watch the Lord of the Rings, and I've always been in love with miniatures and models and things like that. And I think, again, to say the phrase once more, the Lord of the Rings, I think had an impact on that as well. I would make clay models and things, and I would make miniatures, and I played with Warhammer for a while. I don't know if you ever heard of Warhammer. It's a little board. It's a tabletop battle strategy game, and you build and paint the figures. But yeah, I was a nerd for most of my life, and I do think that pulled me into acting in some way.
Is there it? But can you expand on
elucidate on the link?
Just in terms of, so when did this light bulb go off? When did you get your break? All that kind of stuff.
So my school offered multiple co-curricular activities and things. You could.
Is this Scots?
This is Scots, and this is the last school that I went to. I was at a couple of different Sydney schools before that, but Scots was the end zone for me, and they had. You could do pipes and drums, which was classic, your snares and your bagpipes, and it was beautiful. That'd be ringing and reverberating over the entire campus during the day. Or you could do cadets, which was very impressive. There was one occasion where a Black Hawk helicopter landed on our oval for Australia Day.
Yeah, I've seen the grounds at Scots.
They're gorgeous. They're absolutely extraordinary. I don't know where my parents found the money, but all the same, it was spent. And then there was drama, and I did drama toward the end of my schooling there because at first it seemed a way to get out of classes. It seemed to avoid a more difficult responsibility, be it learning an exotic instrument or marching up and down a field or what have you. Of course, I love learning exotic instruments now. I play a number of them, including the bagpipes. But at the time, the idea for me was to avoid as much schoolwork as possible. And drama seemed like that way out. And then I guess I became more open to the idea of being an actor there. I wouldn't say that when I was doing drama, I was sold on a career in the performing arts. I think I did enjoy it, and certainly my teachers there gave me the skills that I suppose would lead to this sort of a career. But I didn't see a professional existence in acting for a while, and then I did Oliver, the stage production of Oliver at my school, and I was Oliver. And then I think a family friend or someone, I don't know how many times removed, but a friend of the family at some distance saw me in Oliver and recommended me to an American manager. And when I went to the US for a vacation a number of years ago, I met this manager and he said, "Why don't you go for an audition?" And so I did. And this first audition of mine, after some 5 callbacks, I booked. And this was Rob Reiner's Flipped, which was a beautiful, adorable little film, set in the late 50s, early 60s, kind of romantic teenage film. And certainly that obviously opened the doors. It was a studio film, and from that point the bus was rolling, and I figured I'd ride it till the wheels fell off, and I stuck around.
But it's amazing to go like that. That seems just too simple.
Well, I wanted to be my father, for example, had got me very into animals and biology and science in general. We'd look at the stars, we'd watch the kangaroos down in the paddock fight each other in the early morning, and he'd have me watching David Attenborough documentaries and all that sort. And I would say, had I not fallen quite fortuitously into acting, I would have wanted to be a biologist of some kind, probably a marine biologist, and more specifically a cetologist, which I believe is the appropriate contraction for someone who studies whales and dolphins.
Okay, I'll have to look that
them
up.
being cetaceans. But
I trust you.
Well, yeah, I don't trust myself these days, really. But that's the last time I remember Googling it. That was it, some years ago. But I would have wanted to do that, if not that, then a physicist, because I've always been immensely fascinated with the world of physics. But the trouble is, I'm not nearly quite so smart enough as I think I need to be a physicist, astro, quantum, or otherwise.
What were your parents, can I ask? What did they do?
My father has, for the majority of his life, been involved in the arts. And I don't mean to say theatre or anything like that, but he's been an artist for multiple purposes.
Okay.
And my mother has been very business savvy. She's worked in public relations before, and she was a journalist for a while. Both of them did a lot of travelling. Yeah, I didn't really, I suppose, take after either of their careers, except insofar as my father's love of art. Translated to my exactly. They both contributed in I think in equal portion to who I am as a person. And then Lord of the Rings obviously was my third parent.
And grew up in Sydney? Or?
Yeah, I grew up in Sydney. Most of my family's from Perth.
Okay.
And then my mother, for some reason, decided to move here. She's probably told me this story, but I have a terrible memory. Another reason why I can't be a physicist. They moved here, and then I obviously was raised here, and I spent 15 years here, and then I moved to the US.
How was someone like Rob Reiner as your first kind of director that you worked with? Was that?
It was magnificent, and of course it set me.
He's an actor as well.
Well, yeah, because he knows exactly how a set's meant to operate, and having done it for so long, and being such a talented man, that was an extraordinary introduction, and I suppose it set me up in a bad way, because to have such a brilliant first time of it, by contrast, the rest can seem I suppose far less impressive. But again, I got lucky even after that, and I booked a job on this I Am Number 4 film, and it was fantastic, because I go straight from Flipped onto another studio film, I Am Number 4, and so I had this, wow, this is so easy. Well, look at me, I'm doing big studio films back to back. And then, of course, you realise that you actually have to work for it, and so I've done hundreds of auditions, and I've booked, 10 of them. So that's like the way it is.
Life.
Yeah, exactly. I live the life of an actor over there, but it's been, as I said, I've been very fortunate, and it's been a great deal of fun, so I'm still going.
Yeah, and by the sounds of it, you're interested in lots of other things as well. Yeah, music.
Absolutely. I mean, I have so many. I suppose I'm a jack of all trades, master of none type person. I like to explore different things and learn different skills, but never to any sort of a professional level. Like, I can play a number of instruments. I've just learned to play the violin this year, but I guarantee you that I will never be playing it in an orchestra, because there are vastly more talented and competent violin players out there. But still, I love the sound of a violin. Hence the segue, Lord of the Rings earlier.
Yeah. But not because it's required of a role or something.
No one's ever said, Callan, can you play the violin for this job? It's just, most of the music on my phone is violin music, and so I listen to it, and hence I want to play it, and I want to be able to play it for myself. But the same goes for the piano, the Chinese violin, a couple of flutes here and there, and the guitar as well, which was my first, and the only one I've had lessons in, and somehow the one I'm worst at. Maybe it's an authority complex. I don't know, but
lack of discipline or something.
Yeah, that could be it. Yeah, maybe that's why I'm an actor. But yeah, so I've got lots of little things going on that I don't think I'll ever pursue really professionally. But if I could up and drop everything, I'd probably be involved in science somehow. If I could be in documentary filmmaking, narrating, something like that. The Legend of Ben Hall was a funny one, because I had not really worked very much in Australia, comparative at least how much I've worked in the US. And you get this idea when working in the US, and we grow up with American films and English films and things, and so you have the idea that that's where it's at. You're sitting in Australia and you're thinking, if I'm an actor, I better go to Los Angeles. And there I was in Los Angeles thinking, I'll just make films here from now on. I don't need to go back to Australia, because the projects probably aren't as good there. Who knows? It was very naive of me, very close-minded. But Ben Hall came along, and it was quite sudden, and if I'm being honest, I don't quite remember exactly which vessel it came through, whether it was my American agent or my manager or maybe even my mother has been a fantastic catalyst for Australian information, but it came through someone, and then I Skyped with the director, Matthew, and he basically said, "Oi, I've got this film about bushrangers, particularly Ben Hall, and you want to be in it? We've got a role for you." And we'll come down to country Victoria, just outside of Kyneton, and it'll be good fun, it'll be pretty, and you get to shoot guns and ride horses. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, it was much more professionally put from his side, but that's what I took from it. That was, I suppose, my main impetus for doing the project, really, was I get to go out to country Australia and shoot in the beautiful countryside, both with a camera and with a toy gun, and ride around on horses and pretend to be a bushranger, which is something every Australian kid at some point wants to be. Yeah, and they gave me the script, and the script was great, and I thought, well, there we go, the script's not terrible, so I have no reason not to do it. Yeah. And there I was, Callan McAuliffe as Daniel Ryan in countryside in Australia, and it was extraordinary. And now I have very deep desire to work more in Australia, in particular in the country.
What was so good about it?
Well, I find the on-set atmosphere is, I don't know if it's remarkably different from the US, but certainly there is a different tone about it, and I think folks are more willing to have fun here, because there was no lack of professionalism, to be sure. Everything got done, and everything got done efficiently, but all the same, I was able to talk to any one member of crew and become friends with them. Even in the short amount of time that I spent comparative to the rest of the cast and crew, I was able to become friends with everyone, and I was able to talk with everyone and make jokes and swear and curse and make fun of people, and no one really was bothered by that. And it wasn't of detriment to the product either, because everyone knew exactly what they were doing.
Did you have was there a bit of culture shock? Because I imagine this was a pretty sort of lower budget kind of production, wasn't it? In terms of like Hollywood, I imagine.
Oh, I mean, I suppose, yeah, but the momentum from my Flipped and I Am Number 4 stuff kind of petered out a few years ago. So I've been trying to do independence and things, such as I think the pursuit of most serious, I say with air quotes, actors these days. They try to do independence just because the studio industry is so swamped with the same thing over and over again. So it wasn't a difficult choice for me by any means. It was a film, and it was a good script, and I got to play a neat character, and it was in Oz, and so that was, again, that's all the incentive that I really needed for it.
I liked how you talked about earlier about Lord of the Rings, the attention to detail, and I wonder, was there an aspect to building this character that you needed as an actor to? I mean, I
don't know if I can properly credit myself with having built a character here. And again, I think well done in bringing it back around with Lord of the Rings. A part of the thing that drew me to the project was a lot of independent films, because they're so the people behind it are so creatively invested in the project. They'll have a what they call like a Bible, or a lookbook or something, which has a lot of pictures and descriptions and concept art, drawings and paintings to set up the tone and the atmosphere of the project. And I saw various pieces from Ben Hall, and just to see the level of detail, as you say, that was going into it, and what they were trying to do, made it a very easy decision. And the character that you speak of came from, I suppose, it was an amalgamation of the concept, the costume department, and the director's vision and what they'd written. I'm in only a tiny part responsible for what came through there, because I suppose I am who I am, and I didn't really have to change myself much to be this character, aside from put on more of an Australian accent, which is kind of a weird thing to do as an Australian, is to have to put on an accent, but I had to all the same.
Dialect kind of.
Yeah, exactly. But it was very easy. It was all laid out for me. They knew exactly what they wanted from the character, and Daniel Ryan is a real life character, but he was quite minimally involved in the story, at least so far as influence is concerned. And so I have wanted to, had a lot of creative liberty in this. But as I said, it all came together quite naturally.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to sit down with a pen and paper and a highlighter and think of the story arc from all the different characters and how they impacted my character and who my character's parents were and the circumstances of his birth and the circumstances of his life and that sort of thing. That would have been taking it too far. Because I can't play all that with my eyes. There's only so much you can do. But certainly... there's the standard effort you put in. You sit down, you read the script, you learn your lines, and you try to not just, I guess, be yourself with a costume on. You got to inhabit part of the world and the tone.
Yeah.
So I suppose I made myself more stoic and gruff than I am normally in real life.
Yeah. I just wonder, how you'd put yourself in the headspace.
Just
in
any other
our mobile phones all the time, and then all of a sudden to go into this whole other. I suppose, world.
Yeah.
And what would it be like to be a bushranger? Why would you,
But on the point you make there of mobile phones being constantly in eye shot, you're always going to have a big blocky camera looking thing there as well.
True.
And while I've got my horse and my gun and my companions beside me, there's always going to be this giant futuristic square black thing over there.
And all these other people behind.
Exactly, and people in modern clothes knocking around, and so you're always taken out of it no matter where you look. And I think acting is less about completely being absorbed in the world as much as it is appearing as though you are. I suppose that's quite a surface attitude, but all the same, in my experience, that's what it's been about. And people have told me I can be believable at times, so there you go. I must occasionally be doing something right.
I remember doing when I studied film, and people talked about a long time ago, and people talked about how we had the potential for Australia to have a genre of its own, which was the bushranger film, and then it was outlawed because the government thought it was dangerous or something. I don't know. That's what I understand.
Is it right?
There was some sort of
I haven't heard about
put into place.
Okay,
and then so I think some people still believe that it's almost like a story of our own that we have here in Australia. I don't know.
To the detractors, I say bollocks. There's no why. It's fantastic. It's wonderful, and it does invoke this most unique and singular environment that is the Australian outback, and that is our just our ecological roundabouts. I think it's like nothing else on Earth, and I think we need to do the country a service in telling its history in film format. I think there needs to be more of it, and I think honestly, if it made its way around the world more, I think the rest of the world would be very interested too, because it is. We live in a really fascinating place, and there's a lot of wonderful stories to tell historically, and so. Yeah, I'm all for keeping it up. I'll be in as many bushranger films as people will be willing to cast me.
Isn't there a series of films?
Well, listen, we won't go too far into that because I know as much as you do on those grounds.
Okay.
But I would love for there to be. And so if people should like to make that happen, they could go and watch Ben Hall multiple times each.
Yeah,
that'd do it.
Yeah, because we've got a small population base, so they have to. Yeah, see it
exactly. I think there's about as many people here as there are in Los Angeles alone. So yeah.
Did you find because Matt's a first-time director, of a feature film,
he's done plenty of it in the past in his own way, but you apparently know more about this than I do. It didn't come across like that at all. No, he very much knew exactly what he was doing, and as I said, the crew and everyone was very respectful to his being the director, and he picked the right people.
Yeah, I think he knows the story pretty well.
Well, that's right, and everyone who got on board was getting on board because they liked his vision. And so they were all ready to make it happen. So he did a fantastic job.
So you have to be totally honest with me. You mean no other film, apart from The Lord of the Rings, ever had sort of an impact on your life? Well, blew you away? I suppose
if I were to really, really think on it, there would be countless other films that have influenced me in the same way that the walk to school changes you as a person in the morning. A lot of it is not necessarily conscious. It's kind of a learning or an adapting by osmosis. Really, you don't quite realize that it's happening. But Lord of the Rings certainly is the one I'm most aware of because I still have a very deep love for it and the world and the books and the films, and so it's an ongoing influence.
Thank you so much, Callan.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.